Hola, vamos a aprender sobre lección 4, palabras indefinidas, indefinite words. So, indefinite words refer to people and things that are not specific. A few examples would be something like something or someone. Now, in Spanish, indefinite words have a positive version and a corresponding negative word that goes with it, which means the opposite. So here, if we were to look at, here we've got positive indefinites and then also its corresponding negative indefinite. So we have algo, which means something or anything, and its corresponding negative word is nada, which means nothing. You have alguien, which is someone or anyone, and its corresponding nadie, which is no one or nobody. You have alguno or alguna, algunos, algunas, and then algun, we'll talk about that more later, means some or any. And then you have its negative, which means none or not any. We have o, which is either or, and ni, which is neither nor. We have siempre, which means always, and nunca and jamás, which both mean never, as its negative. Then we have también, which means also or to, and tampoco, its negative, which is neither or not either. Now, what does all that mean? So a few more details about these. When forming a sentence with a positive indefinite, these will work kind of how we would expect them to. So I want something, yo quiero algo. Someone takes a shower, alguien se ducha. But negatives, when we form negative sentences, it's going to be a little bit different. There's two ways to form a negative sentence in Spanish. You can either place the negative indefinite before the verb. So nadie se levanta temprano. No one gets up early. So there our negative nadie is in front of our verb se levanta. Or here'd be another example. Ellos nunca lo compran. They never buy it. Nunca there is in front of our verb. In the same place you put a no in a negative sentence there. It comes before our verb. The other option would be to place a no before the verb and the negative indefinite after the verb. So it's something like this. No se levanta nadie temprano. No one gets up early. Same sentence. Just another way of doing it. Here you put the no in front of the verb and then put the negative indefinite afterwards. Do note here, to be extra emphatic, they sometimes can add another negative word, which is usually nunca or jamás. So no se levanta nadie temprano nunca. No one ever gets up early. And there you'll see it's also got the nunca or the jamás in there. We have ellos no lo compran nunca. Here that same sentence as above, but done by putting the no in front of the verb and then putting the negative indefinite afterwards. Now, when a sentence, and then just kind of some good rules of thumb, when a sentence is negative, there is always a negative word before the verb. Every negative sentence you've ever done has had that. The no, in that case, is in front of the verb. So whenever a sentence is negative, there needs to be a negative in front of the verb. And once a sentence is negative, only negative indefinites can be used. That's another very important rule with negative sentences in Spanish. And it's going to make them be a little bit weird because double negatives will be required in Spanish where double negatives aren't allowed in English. So direct translation won't really work all the time. So for example, no one ever brushes their teeth. We get no, nadie se cepilla los dientes jamás, or nunca. Either one would have worked. The literal no one brushes their teeth never. And then we've got like a double negative, but it actually translates in English as no one brushes their teeth ever, or no one ever brushes their teeth. We use the negative no one with the positive ever. That gets changed to never in Spanish. It's going to take a little bit to get used to. One thing that's also worth noticing here is that a lot of these indefinites, both negative and positives, no one, anyone, someone, they are all translated using the third person singular conjugations. All right, so some small things, a few small things. So we have alguien and nadie. someone, and no one often use the personal a, and they refer to people and often are direct objects. So, busca usted a alguien? Are you looking for someone? No, no busco a nadie. No, I'm not looking for anyone. And there you'll see that double negative again. In English, we've got anyone, right? No, it makes it no, I'm not. It's negative. Once a sentence is negative, we need to use negative indefinite so that anyone there is translated as no one in Spanish. Alguno and ninguna, which you'll see there's also lots of different variations of that. So matching gender number there. Can use the personal a, but must be referring to people and be the direct object. So, buscas a alguno de tus hermanos? Are you looking for any of your brothers? No, no busco a ninguno. No, I'm not looking for any. Before a masculine singular noun, alguno and ninguno are shortened to algún and ningún respectively. So, ¿tienen ustedes algún amigo puertorriqueño? Do you have any or a Puerto Rican friend? Now, one thing to keep in mind here, often algún or alguna are used in English as a with the idea of any in mind. So you'll see here probably in English a better translation than any would be a Puerto Rican friend. Again, this is kind of a nuanced thing. Could you say, do you have a Puerto Rican friend? Yes, using indefinite article. Yes. It's kind of just a personal preference, a nuanced thing that just takes a little bit of time, but realize algún can be used that way. Just like algunos and algunas can be used in the plural in the place of the indefinite articles unos or unas. Now, notice ninguno and ninguna is rarely used in the plural, even when responding to a plural group. You'll see that I have not included the S's with that above or in your vocab. It's just very rare that they actually do that, one reason or another. So, visitas tú algunos museos? Do you visit some museums? No, no visito ninguno. We don't visit any, referencing museums there, but it is in the singular. Again, notice once a sentence is negative, it needs to use the negative indefinites. Something just to keep in mind with when you use alguno and when you use your plural indefinite articles for some, algunos or algunas is used more with like an abstract sum. Unos or unas is used more when it's referencing a particular amount. Like I have some markers, and you're like holding 3 of them, being more specific to them, and it's clear how many you have to those that you're talking to. You'd probably use the indefinite articles. If you're being more vague, some, they'll usually use algunos. But again, it's a very nuanced thing. And for our intensive purposes, really, they're kind of interchangeable. All right, last off, we're going to talk about pero and sino. So pero is the Spanish word for but. However, there is another word with similar meaning, and that is the word sino. So sino is best translated as but rather or on the contrary, although in English is often translated simply as but. So it's used when the first part of the sentence is negative and the second part contradicts it. It is crucial there to keep in mind that the sino is used when the first part of a sentence is negative. So it's never used when the first part of the sentence is positive. So, los estudiantes no se acuestan temprano, sino tarde. The students don't go to bed early, but late. And so there we have this first part, the students don't go to bed early, is negative. And the second part, after the sino, is contradicting. They don't go to bed early, but rather, or on the contrary, late. So while it's often translated just simply but in English, and if you're going to use sino, it would, anytime you use sino, it would be you'd be able to put a but rather or an on the contrary in there, and it would make sense. And this isn't something that they can do when they want to. If this is the case where the first part is negative and the second part contradicts it, they use sino. So, María nunca habla francés, jamás, sino español. So, Maria never ever speaks French, but rather Spanish, or but Spanish. Using sino there, the first part is negative. She never ever speaks French. The second part contradicts it, but what she, on the contrary, speaks is Spanish. And you'll see there they used the double Hamas with Hamas or with a nunca to be extra emphatic there. And then we have pero. This is what we've used up till now for but. So they shave but don't like to shave. You have something like ellos se afeitan pero no les gusta. And perhaps you could include no les gusta afeitarse. It's implied there, but you could write it or not write it, just like you could write it or not write it in English. And there you'll notice, first off, the first part of the sentence is not negative. That would tell you right off the get-go would not be sino. Also, but rather, or on the contrary, doesn't really fit in there. They shave, but rather don't like to. It doesn't really fit in there. Those glasses are expensive, but pretty. Again, there's not really a full contradiction there, and the first part's not negative, so we use pero. Esas gafas son caras, pero bonitas. So one thing to keep in mind here, pero is going to be used vast majority of the time. Sino is kind of a side use, but it is used more often than you think. So watch for a negative first part and then a second part that contradicts it. And the but could be translated as but rather or on the contrary. If that is the case, you'll use sino. El fin.